I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Hey guys, if you like what I'm doing, click the Amazon banner at the top of the homepage on FascinationStreetPod.com and do all of your shopping through Amazon. Once you click on it and it takes you to Amazon, you can bookmark it or add it to your favorites and you won't have to go to my site each time. It helps me keep the show going, and again, thanks for listening. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is part 1 of my interview with veteran actor Glenn Morshower. You know Glenn from hit movies like Tango and Cash, Black Hawk Down, and most of the Transformers movies, plus TV shows like The West Wing, 24, Bloodline, and The Resident. In this episode, we get to know Glenn and what got him into acting, as well as what got him into teaching acting in both LA and Dallas for 34 years with no sign of slowing down. We also talk about why you should treat your life and your environment as a campground. That'll make more sense when you listen to it. And Glenn tells us some wonderfully inspiring stories about how to actually enhance our humanity. It was a great honor to speak with this man. Now remember, this is part 1, so come back Thursday to catch part 2. So enjoy, folks. This is part 1 of my interview with veteran actor of stage and screen, Glenn Morshower.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Glenn Morshower. How are you doing today, sir?
I am in a state of extreme gratitude. Just a beautiful day here in Dallas, Texas.
I have heard you speak a lot about your extreme gratitude, and I think that's one of the secrets to your success. So we're going to touch on that a little bit later, but for right now, why don't you tell me about where you were born and raised?
I was actually born here, left many years ago. I will be 60 years old here in a little less than 2 weeks. I left for California when I was 18 years old. I was born and raised in Dallas, left when I was 18, and spent 35 years in Los Angeles, and then based on some family health issues from loved ones that lived here in Dallas, and we wanted to be by their side because they were not given encouraging news health-wise, and we didn't want to, frankly, miss the end of their lives, my in-laws specifically. And so we came back to be by their side for what we thought would be maybe a year, possibly a little over. And we fell in love with being back in Dallas. My wife, Carolyn, is from Dallas as well. And we enjoyed being here so much that we just stayed, and we've been here 7 years now. But by that time, after the 35 years that I spent in LA, I had established myself to the point of almost never being asked to audition anymore. We have what's called straight offers. So people knew my work, whether it was from 24 or Transformers or The West Wing or the series Dallas or even Bloodline, although Bloodline happened after I moved back here. But there is a point in an actor's life where you're established enough to the point where you could live anywhere. And fortunately, I was able to reach that mile marker, and things are really peaceful. And we love Los Angeles, still have a home in Los Angeles, and I commute there a lot. I teach there often, but Dallas is home again, and we're really happy here.
Well, I think that is fantastic. I am a born and raised Texas boy myself, born in San Antonio. I've lived in San Antonio my entire life, except for a brief stint in Louisville, Kentucky, but came right back here as soon as I could. So I'm a fellow Texas boy, and I love this place.
Well, I know you've spent time in Louisville because you don't say Louisville or Louisville. That's a mark of someone who spent time there. Only people from there or that have spent time know to say Louisville. So, way to go.
Thank you very much. That was no small feat. Like when I first moved there, that was the one thing that everybody pointed out to me around town. They were like, no, this, like you get lessons. You'll go into a bar and order a beer and they'll say, hey, where are you from? And then you'll tell them and then they'll go, okay, say the name of this town. And then they'll give you a quick tutorial on how to do it.
Right. Of course, there's actually an old joke. And the joke goes like this. They say, is the capital of Kentucky pronounced Louisville or Louisville? And people will think forever, and then they'll usually guess wrong and say Louisville. And whether they say Louisville or Louisville, you go, no, actually, it's pronounced Frankfurt.
Thank you. I was going to say that. So I'm glad you did that, because I noticed that you have a penchant for telling dad jokes. And I want to know where that came from, because they are hilarious.
For telling dad jokes?
Yes. Dad, like father.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I love a good joke. And I joke all the time, but I didn't know I specifically... Now, where did the dad jokes reference come from? I don't even know if I know any dad jokes.
Well, so that right there was a dad joke. It's basically a joke that when you tell your teenage child's friends, everybody rolls their eyes and groans. That's a dad joke.
Oh, I got you. So not a joke about dads, but rather a joke that a dad would tell.
Correct. Like a dad in a sitcom would tell these jokes.
I got you. Well, then in that case, I tell dad jokes all the time, because I take great pride and pleasure in making people groan.
Well, my favorite dad joke that I've heard you tell was the one word in the English language that is pronounced incorrectly by everybody.
Which word?
You're killing me. Are you serious? The word that's pronounced incorrectly in English by everybody is the word incorrectly.
Oh, right. That's right.
I love every time I hear you tell one of those jokes. So I'm assuming that you do it just because you like the silliness of it and you like to make people grin.
I do, and I'm a huge fan of puns. And we do a game in my workshop called 165. And the form the game takes is this. You say, and it's not a game I invented, it's an old improv game. And you say 165, and they give you a noun. So in this case, let's make up a noun. The noun would be cats. So you would say 165 cats walk into a bar, and the bartender can't serve 165 cats. And the cats say, well, what are you going to do? Throw me out? And then you make a cat pun.
Wow.
Or if somebody said 165 cats walks into the bar, and the bartender says, hey, I can't serve 165 cats. And they say, why not? And he said, because we're a private members club only. And they say, well, what would I need to do to obtain a membership? He said, well, you have to pay $20. And they said, well, who do I give the money to? And they said, well, you have to stand right over there in the fee line.
Oh, my goodness. I like that as a game, though. I do like that, especially as an improv game. Yeah, that's great.
It's a great game.
That really gets your wheels turning. I like it.
Yeah. Let me give you one more. Pencils. Someone yelled out pencils in class recently. And we said, 165 pencils walk into the bar. The bartender says, I can't serve 165 pencils. They said, well, that's not what we heard out on the street, but obviously we've been misled.
Whoa.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
I like it. So you were born, I guess, and raised in Texas. Can you tell me about what you wanted to be when you grew up?
When I was 11 years old, my mom took my brother Brian and myself to the Dallas Theater Center to see a production. So this is going back to 1970. We saw a production of Charles Dickens' play, A Christmas Carol. And that day did nothing for my brother. He was frankly bored out of his mind. But for me, it changed my life. I loved watching the play and actually knew one of the girls that was in it. I didn't know that at the time when I went to see it. But when the curtain came up and I saw my friend Debbie on stage, it was a surprise to me. And I thought, Debbie looks like she's having so much fun up there. And I asked my mom at intermission, what does a young person need to do to be in one of their shows? Because I'd really love to do this. And again, I was 11 years old. And she said, I'm pretty sure they offer classes. And so I started training immediately. I think she enrolled me a week or two later. And I worked at the theater center for 4 years until I was 15 years old, having the time of my life. It's where I first really learned the meaning of unconditional love. And I think that was my initial draw to acting, is that here I was involved in a class of very diverse human beings, And some were straight and some were gay and all different ethnicities, and everybody showed everyone love and acceptance. And we were a family. And it really touched my heart. 4 years into that, a phone call changed my life, where the theater center had received a phone call from a local talent agency that they were casting a national television commercial and wanted some young actors, and that there would be a great deal of dialogue. And apparently they represented, this agency, mostly models and not a lot of young actor types. So they said, could you send us some kids who are unafraid and don't get nervous being in front of a lot of people? We were all actors that were used to being in front of the audience at the Kalita Humphrey Theater there, which holds 435 people. And now all we need to do is be calm in an interview where there might be 6 or 7 people in the room. And I wound up going in on my very first audition for a paid job, a national TV commercial for CB radios, which obviously are not part of today's culture. Now they call them cell phones. But the CB, the CB was the cell phone of the 70s. And I wound up going in and booking the job. And to make a long story short, I booked several more commercials, enjoyed doing it, enjoyed being not only paid, but repaid when residuals came around. And I thought, this is actually a pretty good lifestyle. Well, my original plan was to go to New York City and do Broadway, period. I had no other plan whatsoever. I felt so comfortable on the stage, and my plan was to be an actor for my life. But film and television had not even occurred to me, and frankly, I don't even understand why. I don't know why I never thought about film or TV. But I always loved the experience of live theater. And that commercial and the subsequent commercials, and then in 1975, I was given the lead in a movie. And those collectively completely changed the trajectory of my life. And it took me to the West Coast instead of the East Coast. And I got, I do want to call it lucky, in that I got a lucky break. I think we earn the jobs when we're given a break, but the break itself is, there's a lot of luck involved in life. I don't think I was lucky to get the job. I was lucky to get the break, meaning the opportunity to do a lead in a feature that wasn't even an indie film. It was a studio picture. And the fact that a studio would back a feature film with an entirely unknown cast is, frankly, it's unheard of. And I didn't realize that. So although it was a very big deal to me then, at 59 and 44 years later, it's a much bigger deal to me now, because now I would tell young Glenn, if I were talking to me 45 years ago, I would say, Glenn, you have no idea how rare this is. They'll cast some unknowns in the smaller roles, but not your lead roles. And kid, you're getting ready to go do a lead in a movie. You're going to carry a feature film, and you've never even been in a movie. And that is how I got my start. And that film was called Drive-In. It was a Columbia Pictures release. And it came out in the summertime of 76. And I graduated high school the following year here in Dallas and went straight. I graduated early because I wanted to really take advantage of this wave of opportunity, and moved to LA in the spring of 77, and have been out there ever since. And every dream I ever had as an actor, in other words, what I decided was important for me to achieve, has already been achieved. I'm blessed to be one of the busiest character actors in the entire business. I'm not sitting around wanting anything. If someone said, between now and death, what do you want? And my honest answer is to continue living the life I'm living. I feel that heaven is a condition that begins here on earth. It's not something that starts after death. We ignite the experience of having heaven now. We get that underway now by being in alignment and saying yes to the things that we really believe our soul is here to experience. And so I don't walk around hoping, wishing, or wanting. And to not have those playing a prominent role in my life is a beautiful thing. I spent a lot of time smiling and a lot of time in gratitude. And for the last several years, a great deal of time has been spent teaching, because I want to teach others to have the life that I've had and the life that I'm having, present tense, and that there is a formulaic approach to having it, and that when you do have it, there's nothing quite as wonderful as the satisfaction that is brought about by living the life you really believe you came here to live. It's a beautiful thing, and that's kind of my day-to-day existence. I've been blessed to be in a 40-year marriage with my high school sweetheart, and we dated for 2 years and married foolishly when we were 19 and 18. We broke every rule in the book, and you know what? It's worked out just fine. I don't believe that life is about following a set of rules and regulations.
It's funny that you say that because you have played more military personnel and police officers than anybody in history, I think. So it's funny that you would say that about rules and regulations. But first, hats off and congratulations to a 40-year marriage. That is outstanding and in today's day, unheard of, especially if it's your high school sweetheart. So again, congratulations. That's very well done.
Well, thank you. And also in show business, by the way, a 40-year marriage translates like dog years. And apparently in showbiz, that's about a 280-year marriage.
It certainly is. So like I said, you have played more military and police officers or some sort of a cop more than anybody else. That reminds me of another previous guest of my show, actor Rance Howard.
Oh, I'm friends with Rance. I'm sorry that he's not around on the earth anymore, but Rance was my buddy.
That guy was amazing. I was actually, I believe I was the last full-length interview he ever did, but he had the distinction of playing more men of the cloth than just about anybody in front of the camera. So that's a pretty cool distinction as well. And I had a feeling that you might know him.
Yeah, Rance had a firm grip on wholesome. I mean, he was true rural Americana. Rance originally was from Oklahoma. And he, of course, is how obviously Ron got his start. But years ago, and I'm going back easily 35 years ago. But I was walking into a commercial interview, and Rance Howard was in there, and they sent Rance and I in there as a father-son pair. Well, I resemble Ron Howard in many ways, and even more so when I was younger. So it was a good pairing. And we got to be buddies that day. That's where we met. Neither one of us got that job. But it came full circle 10 years ago when Rance was cast in a film that I had the lead in, a film called Grizzly Park. And we went to Virginia together and spent a lot of time on set together and got to be really good friends and know each other very well. So, yeah, Rance was my buddy. And again, a very busy character actor.
Oh my gosh, that guy worked for 60 years or something. It was a very wonderful experience for me because I got to sit in his living room in his house where he raised those boys and talk to him at his breakfast table for a couple of hours. And he was just the nicest guy. And
are you talking about his place in Toluca Lake?
I am. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, his last film, which is called Appleseed, it's going to be at the Tucson Film Festival, like I think this weekend. Like that's his last film.
Oh, wow.
Also, okay, so let's talk about DTC, the Dallas Theater Company. Now, back then, in those days, I think you said it was the 70s, another previous guest of mine, another Texas actor named Tommy G. Kendrick, he was around the DTC back then. Are you familiar with him?
I know Tommy Kendrick very well. I did one of Tommy's first films, a movie called The Bermuda Triangle, which if you ever rented it, I am prepared at this time to give you your money back. It was the single worst film of my entire career. It wasn't one of the worst. It was the worst of 222 projects, and Tommy Kendrick and I shared that heavenly experience together.
That is fantastic. He is another super, super nice guy.
Yeah, Tommy's a good guy.
So, tell me, what is a dialectician?
A dialectician is, I don't know that the word exists, but
I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
I use it all the time. I say that I'm a certifiable dialectician, which simply means that I specialize in dialects. I've always been fascinated by voices, and I personally hold the belief that an actor who does voices has an increased edge over actors who do not. And that edge is not a mild edge. It is a considerable edge when you have the ability to walk into a room, and you never know, like sometimes you might be able to sound like this. You never know, you've got to be able to change midstream. And I worked, for example, I did a series for Netflix called Bloodline. I worked with a guy named Ben Mendelsohn, who was Australian. And every day, Ben would come on to set and say, I'm not going to say these words. And it's just the way I've been sounding. And then all of a sudden, you show up in, in a television series called Law and Order. And all of a sudden, you drop your voice down into this lower register, and it's very different. And the bottom line is people born and raised in Texas usually can't do an accent like this. It just, it's not part of their arsenal. And then sometimes you're never going to know. You're going to sound like this. And all of a sudden you're talking fast and you say, espero que cuando caliéntese porque mis hijos los invitaron a comer y chico que van, que paso. And nobody understands what you're saying to them today. And I've always enjoyed dialects, and I do a bunch of them. And it comes in really handy in the voiceover world. And frankly, they're just fun to do. It's fun to be playful. It's fun to show up and interact with people in the character of your choosing. If I decide I want to go out and be a New Yorker for the day, or if I want to be one of these people who overpronounce words like that, and go into a barber shop and speak to everyone like that, then it's just fun. And I love having fun. I've never outgrown having fun. I think it's an important part of life.
What do you attribute your ability to do these accents to?
I have kind of a musical ear. It's how I learned to play the piano. Our job as actors is to listen, observe, and replicate. And I've spent my whole life doing it. So it's just a skill set that I've acquired over time. If our job is to recreate someone's life, everybody's different. Everybody walks different. They talk different. They have different educational levels. They use different tonalities, different beats, different pauses. People are either less articulate or more articulate. And people are vastly different. And so it's fun to replicate another's personality. I just enjoy it. I'm fascinated by voices, and it's exactly like playing the piano. You do it, and it's a little bit off, and you do it, and it's a little less off, and you keep doing it until you hit the sweet spot of the note. And then all of a sudden, you sound like another human being. And I enjoy being me. I think one of the reasons that people sometimes like doing other characters is, frankly, they're not comfortable in their own skin. I've met a lot of actors where that was their truth. Mine is the exact opposite. There's no one I'd rather be than me. And although I'm a compilation of everyone I've ever said yes to, meaning personalities that I've been blessed to play in my career, I played Aaron Pierce on the Series 24 for 7 years, and certainly there is all sorts of trace evidence of Aaron Pierce having expressed himself through me and as me, but my favorite person to be is me, and I don't have a need to run away from me. It's just something I enjoy doing, but it's not a need. It's a choice. It's a desire. I think that part of the root cause of wellness, and I teach my students this all the time. I, by the way, have been a teacher for a long time, about 34 years. I started when I was 25. And one of the centralized truths of wellness to me, I said this just last night, actually, in my workshop here in Dallas. I said, the sign of true mental health and emotional health and spiritual health is to not want to be anyone else or anywhere else, to not wish you were someone other than who you are, and to not want things to be different than they are, but to enjoy the expression of you as you, and to be grateful for living life as you do right where you are. And if you want to change it, then change it. But don't be upset about it being what it is. Just understand that it being what it is part of the divine process. It's all part of your Earth School curriculum. So you're where you are. So what? Live it, learn from it, and move forward and design your life, and know that you have the power within you to reconfigure things. If you don't like the shape of your life, don't sit around whining about it. Use that same time you used to spend complaining, being more proactive in creating the life that you do desire, so that you can advertise your life as something you're very proud of. You enjoy being you. Every one of us was assigned to this unique sack of skin that we inhabit for a relatively brief period of time, and I'm committed to its full expression. And part of that commitment includes teaching that. So I started teaching an audition mastery course in LA 34 years ago, and it mutated into being a course in wellness that started out as just helping actors have a healthy attitude when they would go into a room, to create within them an expectation of victory, and to get rid of words like hope, wish, and want. Well, I hope I'll do well today. I want to do well today. I wish things would go well. I wish I would have a career. Those are really weak places to come from. And as this branched out, it became very successful, and it all happened as a result of my agent in Los Angeles saying, Glenn, you work so much. Is there a chance that maybe this is teachable? Do you think you could teach actors how to increase their booking percentage, for example? And I accepted the challenge and said, I do. And I started. And I don't know that I would have started. I would have eventually, but I don't think I would have started in those years had I not been prompted by an agent saying, do it. And I did. And then about 15 years ago, I was in Houston, and my whole life changed in one night because I was leading a group of actors from all over the country who had come to attend an audition mastery course. And in that course, I was talking about things like power of the spoken word, loyalty, joy, passion, presence, love, followed by love, followed by love. And love was kind of the central theme. And a man approached me at the end of the night and said, I was blown away. And in fact, he sounded just like this. He's a good old boy. And he said, hey, Glenn. And I loved him because it took him 2 syllables to say my 1-syllable name. He said, hey, Glenn, my granddaughter told me that if you were ever to come anywhere near Houston, that I was supposed to come hear you speak. And as you can see, I have done that. And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, and I want to tell you, I didn't know why it was so important because I'm not an actor. But my granddaughter said, no, Grandpa, you need to go. And he said, son, I want to tell you, you weren't on that stage tonight talking about acting at all. Barely mentioned it. You were mostly talking about maximizing your experience of being alive. You were talking about falling in love with your life. And you mentioned helping others a lot. You mentioned being of service a lot. You mentioned being someone who celebrates every waking moment a lot. And I'm wondering, and he reached into his jacket and said, I'm wondering if you might want to come speak to my people at Exxon. And I said, you want me to do this program for your people at Exxon? He said, I sure do. I said, well, the answer is yes, sir. And I'm very touched by your offer. How would you like me to tailor this to fit your company? And he said, Glenn, I don't want you to change anything. I want you to do what you did tonight. And if you do, they're going to scoop your butt up like good ice cream. And that man changed my life because he took what was once upon a time considered to be a talk for actors and turned it into a global presentation. He convinced me that there was a universality to my message. Everything changed that night. And within a few months, I was speaking all over corporate America and started speaking not only at companies, but then asked to speak at a lot of churches, synagogues, and pretty much anyone who had time to open their heart. And that is frankly what I'm most devoted to now. Acting is secondary, and what is primary is helping people feel good and having them claim their dreams. And that's it. And I realize I was long-winded in telling you that, but I'm one of those kind of interviews where if you give me a topic to take off on, I can do it without a series of 4 and 5 word answers, but to just tell you the story of my experience of being alive.
Hey, streetwalkers. Well, you're not literally streetwalkers, but now that I've got your attention, I am Stephen O'Reilly, and I have a podcast called the Bar Star Podcast. And since you're listening to the Fascination Street podcast, I think you should check out my show. It's just as interesting without all the famous people, because Steve has connections that I just do not have. But if you dig podcasts about music, working musicians, and other random shit that I decided to talk about, based around music, of course, because that's what I do. I'm a working musician for the past 30 years, then you need to check out the Bar Star Podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcast, on any platform, and make sure you check out barstarpodcast.com. Now back to the one and only Steve Owens and whatever the hell he was talking about.
I've been happy my entire life, but I got to tell you, I've never been happier than what I'm experiencing right now. And Carolyn and I were talking about this at lunch today, is what an incredible time we're in the middle of. I think it comes down to trusting the process of your life and get off of the roller coaster of I'll celebrate when things are good. I'll freak out when things are bad. And you're on that roller coaster train of always fearing the lows and craving the highs, instead of just looking at it and saying, I enjoyed the whole ride. My brother passed away 3 weeks ago, very suddenly and unexpectedly.
I am so sorry.
Thank you. Sincerely, thank you. And it was the most devastating loss of my life, bar none. I've never experienced anything like it. But I also had 60 years to appreciate it. It's a long time, and it's a lot longer than most people get.
That's true.
And I'm grateful for every moment. And I'm very sad that he's gone. But he had his opportunity to live his life the way he chose to live it. And sometimes we get an earlier checkout than we had anticipated. Sometimes that's the deal. And so living with great clarity that there are no guarantees and that it is very important to be present with the people that you're with and to make sure that, we were taught something in the Boy Scouts, which is quite beautiful, which was to leave your campsite better off than it was when you arrived. Simple and beautiful teaching. And what I don't think they understood is that it wasn't going to be limited to the campsite, at least not for me, that they were actually teaching us a magnificent life lesson. So hear what I'm saying on this. What if your world is your campsite? What if we're not talking about campsites specifically at all? What if everywhere you go, you label it your campsite? Every lunch you have with somebody, that's your campsite. Your place of business, that's your campsite. If you're in a marriage, that's your campsite. If you're on set as an actor, that's your campsite. So wherever you are, you have a commitment to leave that space better off than it was upon your arrival. And you mean it. It's not just a cheap word game. It's not a funny, feel-good, woo-woo, foo-foo idea. You live your life by it. That you're devoted to making sure, I teach my actors this, I teach them that your job is not to get the job. Your job is to walk into a room and make sure that they damn well know they've been paid a visit. And that's it. You leave the room and they're going, we done been paid a visit. Like, what was that just came in here? That was a moving life force. It was very, very alive. And so I believe in it with all my heart. And I believe that people who are devoted to that change the world. It's such a simple thing to understand that I am here to anoint this circumstance. Whatever it is, I'm going to anoint it with love and leave it better off than it would have been had I never arrived in earth or in this unique circumstance. Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to walk into any circumstance and make it worse. How dare me? How dare me enter a space and make it worse than it was before I got there? I think that is such an unconscious act. And I wish more people would consider that when engaging one another instead of being driven by their egos and deciding that they can walk in and get their needs met and say anything to anyone, anytime, any way, with no regard for the mark it leaves upon their humanity. And we have a world that is full of that.
Yes, we do.
And I realize I can't change the whole world. That's not my mission. But my mission is certainly to affect change favorably. Even though it's just a very small percentage of the cosmos, if everyone is committed to changing just a small area of the entirety of this picture, we would get the whole thing changed. If everybody just had a commitment to do their job and affect one human being or more favorably. One more thing, and then I'll shush with this long-winded explanation, but here's a simple example of this. When I go and get gas, and we all put our own gas in the car these days, very few full-service stations. I don't remember when the last time I saw a full-service station was. So we go in and we pump our own gas. Well, during that time, I consider that sort of, for the average person, that's not a period you can do a whole lot with. In other words, you're just kind of standing there, watching the numbers tick, and you go, well, we got $20 more to go. And you ho, da, 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 da. Maybe you're humming the Jeopardy theme. Maybe you're checking your cell phone. I don't know what you're doing. Here's what I do. I utilize that time while the numbers are rolling up and my gas tank is filling to look around and see what trash is in the lane. And I pick it up and I put it in the garbage can. If I also see a living creature, such as a worm or a caterpillar or some slow-moving bug that is going to be annihilated by the next car that comes into the lane. And of course, they don't mean anything by it. They just don't see it. I see it as my responsibility to relocate that worm. And I've done it so many times, I've long since lost count. This is not about being a do-gooder. It's simply the way I teach people to live life. And here's what you base it upon. My question to you, Steve, would be, what would you do if you were the worm? And you just as easily could have been. It was a cosmic coin toss that you wound up expressing as a human. Well, the worm didn't. The worm wound up being a worm. And it has issues just like you do, meaning it wants to go from one place to the next. It wants to eat. It needs to poop, just like you do. And so I will take that creature and put a dollar bill. It's the easiest thing because a credit card is too hard and it can cut the creature. But a dollar bill is kind of soft and gentle. And I'll put it up under it and allow it to walk up onto it or crawl. And then simply walk it over 15 or 20 feet away to where the nearest bush is or grass, and relocate it into a place where it's not going to be stomped upon or crushed by a car. And you say, wow, this is just kind of weird or out there or whatever. What it does is it connects you with the entire picture. It connects you with the entire world. It gives you a global consciousness because you're expressing from a community-minded place. And now you're part of something that is bigger than you are. And you have proactively made a difference in that worm or bug's life. And I'm not joking. And now you look up and you only have $1.50 more to go. And now 3 pieces of trash have been relocated and a worm has been saved. And you walk away from that gas station when it fills up, feeling empowered and feeling uplifted because you realize that the world is better off with people like you in it. So it actually favorably affects your self-esteem. Now, why do I mention all of this? Because it is that same self-esteem that you will carry into every circumstance you enter, including going in and auditioning for a job. The bigger picture is that you're not just there for the job. The bigger picture is you're sharing your essence with the room. You're sharing who you are. And now you're an improved version of you because you just showed this wonderful thing called compassion. And you just did it down the street at the Arco station. And you do it in every spot you inhabit. And now you walk into a room and they can't wait to sign your energy up to be a part of their experience. And yes, they love what you did in the audition. They love your acting or whatever, but it's not what they're primarily responding to. What they're primarily responding to is how plugged in you are to what it means to be human and what it means to be a vibrant life force. I don't think the average person is celebrating their life. They're living it, but are they celebrating it? Are they jazzed? Do they wake up pumped? And I'm not talking about, they attended a wellness seminar. I don't mean that. Something that's not sustainable. They cheer, hoo-ha, go life, and it lasts for about 48 hours, and come Monday morning, they're over it. I'm talking about a sustainable joy quotient that is through the roof because they're really dialed into the brevity of life, and they want to live it with all of their might and watch excitedly about what happens when you do. Why did I tell you all that? Because that's where my career has come from. It didn't come from doing dialects. That's part of it, but that's not the primary part. It didn't come from who I know. We call that relationship capital. It's not the primary part. The primary part is getting excited about the privilege of what it means to be alive. And when you get real clear on that, you become unstoppable in any field of endeavor. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be an actor, be a therapist, be a rabbi, be an electrician, own a coin collector's shop, do whatever you want to do. But whatever you do, you're going to do it full out. So there is my long-winded story of what makes me tick, my friend.
Well, I really like that story, and I love the phrase sustainable joy quotient. I love that phrase. Did you come up with that yourself?
Yeah, I did. I'm kind of a wordsmith, and so I always give due credit. When I pick up an expression from someone, I always credit the person, and I've been privy to a lot of great sayings over the years, but I spend a lot of time writing, and I've been published twice. I enjoy creative word use. So yeah. And I love the idea of sustainability, a sustainable joy quotient, because that matters more to me than someone who feels good for a day or two. I'm not impressed with that. But if every time I'm around someone, I can't help but feel the joy that they are exuding, I mean, it's beautiful.
Well, speaking of beautiful, let's talk about your actor training class that you do and have done.
You know what I thought you were going to say?
What did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say, speaking of beautiful, Glenn, I just recently saw your latest headshot.
Oh, my gosh. No, you didn't. Hilarious.
And I was prepared to just say, hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, I think I'm going to cut it there. That's long enough for this episode. Make sure you come back on Thursday to catch part 2 of my interview with Glenn Morshower. Hey guys, this is Steve Owens from Fascination Street Podcast here with a very important message. I'm awesome. I bet you thought I was going to say something else, but nope. What's important here is that I am awesome. I started this show because I truly believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear those stories. In the short time that I've been doing this show, I've interviewed actors, directors, writers, inventors, podcasters, musicians, pro athletes, Olympic athletes, actual war heroes, even a Bond girl and a luthier, whatever the hell that is, and of course, regular people. From people who wanted to be stars but never gave it a real try, to big company CEOs and people who got to meet their favorite president. I love getting to meet and speak with people who have a story to tell. I feel like everyone does, and it's my job to get them to tell it. You never know who my next guest will be. An Academy Award-winning actor, a platinum-selling musician, or your own mother-in-law. But one thing is for certain, you will be fascinated by their story. So come take a walk with me down Fascination Street. You can find Fascination Street Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and of course, FascinationStreetPod.com. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.